Hey everyone. All right, thanks so much. Yeah, it's really nice to be here. Haven't been to the Low Countries in quite a while, but I used to live in Leuven, and so I've got to see a lot of old faces here today, so it's really nice. Today we're going to be talking about first-person interactivity in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and I called this talk "Picking Up Things" just kind of as a joke, but as I'm thinking more about it, in this first-person shooter experience or first-person thing, you typically think of shooters, and especially with MachineGames, we've made a lot of nice Wolfenstein titles, and so I actually think that this works more as a pick 'em up as opposed to a shoot 'em up. So today we're going to talk about the really good new pick 'em up game, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and I'm really delighted to be able to give you. Just to be able to represent the dev team for this. I mean, there was a lot of people who worked on this in every department. I would say this is a studio-wide effort to get, interactivity and pickups and things to be readable, to be usable. And so there's too many people to name, but I do want to just give a very specific shout out to Peter Johansson, who kind of took this from the very beginning and, is probably working on it right now for the DLC. So, he's at work right now. All right, a little bit about myself. My name is Zeke Virant. I'm the lead game designer at MachineGames. And before MachineGames, and even before games, actually, I worked in music. I worked on experimental opera and played in some bands and stuff. I wanted to get into games because opera felt like old, and games was something I really loved, and it felt like a natural exploration. So I worked on an indie game called Softbody, which you can play today, which is really fun, very musical. And then I worked at Avalanche for a while and worked on the Hunter Call of the Wild, a nice, wonderful hunting simulation game, open world, lots of really huge environments to get lost in. It was really fun to work on and design. And then I also worked on Call of the Wild: The Angler in its early days. And then for the last 5 years, I've been at MachineGames, where I shipped Indiana Jones: The Great Circle. So for those who aren't familiar with the game, I'm just going to do a quick brief overview. This is a first-person adventure game, and we also have third-person for some limited gameplay and cinematics and whatnot. And for traversals, we also will allow this to be, to zoom out so you can see the whole world around you. Notice right away we call it an adventure game, and it's kind of been the focus here, is to kind of pull away from the whole action thing. While we do have plenty of action, lots of punching, and you can use guns in this game as well, I think it's very important that we focused ourselves on the things that we haven't proved as a studio up until this time, was exploration and puzzles and like very long gameplay sessions where you're kind of transitioning from all sorts of different gameplay styles. We developed this in close collaboration with Lucasfilm Games. They were a really lovely partner to work with as well, and they helped us throughout the entire development of it. Chronologically, this game is set between Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade, and those are the two films that we kind of took most inspiration from. So in terms of story and tone and setting, if you've seen those two films, kind of think of us just like right in the middle of it. It kind of takes place right after Indy and Marion have broken up. There's a very strong focus on the puzzles and exploration in this game. We've always done a lot of story-driven stuff at at MachineGames with the Wolfenstein series, and this is no exception. I think this is just allows us even more space to lean into that and continue to make great stories. And then in terms of action, we do have a preference for melee and stealth combat, but guns are always an option in this as well, and we'll get to a long section about where we talk about the gun problem. How can we make this game not about shooting and make it feel more like what an Indiana Jones adventure should be, which is scrappy stealth and moment-to-moment weirdness. So our key guidelines for this is just basically that you are Indiana Jones. So every time you crack the whip, every idol you pick up, every guy you punch in the face and push over a ledge, it's like you're doing that all in the shoes of Indiana Jones. We want you to feel like you are this character. We want players to, really try to play it as if they were Indy, get into that role. We also wanted a super high level of interactivity for this. So every space that you go into, we want you to slow down and look around, see what kind of clues you can find, see if there's a hidden secret behind there. And then all these interactions should feel very physical. Like I should see my hand reach out, I should feel it grab, and I should see it in my hand. When I take out a journal, when I take out my journal or review my map, that's always in hand. It's something I can walk around with, and all the notes that I find also go in there as well. An adventure game first. I think we've covered that one. So today we're going to be talking about a couple of features that really help this come to life. We're going to be talking about the grip system, which is our general interaction system we use throughout the whole game. We'll talk a bit about the journal and how that fits into it as well. I'm going to talk about melee and stealth, and as a result also talk a little bit about guns. And then we're going to talk about density, like density of gameplay, density of pickups, density of things you find in the game, and how we kind of, what was the process for figuring out like what kind of items do we have in the game? What is the interactions that we have? How do we teach people what is interactable and what is not? Yeah, so we'll just jump right in. So the grip system is our general interaction system, and it's just an acronym. It stands for grab. So I grab onto the golden idol here, or I grab onto a chain and reach out. Well, that's before grab, but you know, this is an acronym. So I focus on the chain, and I can see that it's interactable because my hand is reaching out towards it. If there is something next to it and I focus on that, my hand will, of course, shift following the hand. Interact, I've reached out, grabbed onto the chain, and now I can pull it, or I've reached out and grabbed onto a door handle, I can push it down. And then this one is just, I think we only put this in because it's like, it sounds better to have the grip system as opposed to the grease system, but this is just a more specific kind of, interaction. So how this worked in game is more like this. We start with reach out. So I'm reaching out to touch the latch here, or grab the handle of this latch. I grab it, and then I pick it up. So we'll do a quick video just showing that all together. So.
Yeah. Ladies first.
And with this specific interaction, we have a longer finisher, where we can kind of get Gina into place and not have to worry about, oh, what happens if Indy just jumps in before her and breaks all the scripting? So no, instead we had her jump in here. So reach out is pretty obvious. It's like anytime there's something that's interactable, like this shower brush that I'll use as a melee weapon in a minute, I'll reach out my hand towards it. And if it's a grip activation, something that kind of locks me in place that I have kind of limited interaction with, also reaching out the hand. So this is the start of everything that we have in the game in terms of interactions. And for all of our animations, you'll see that any of the animations that we enter into, we're kind of taking it from this pose. So all the animators for all these activations, they're starting from this. And we can kind of divide all of the grip interactions into two different things. We have activations, and then we have pickups. I'm going to talk with activations first. So I've grabbed onto an item, I can interact with it, and I'm kind of locked in position. It gives us a lot of room to this is the puzzle interaction. We've given you a limited supply of interactions that you can do on this, so as not to confuse people too much. And yeah, you go up to it, you focus on, you reach your hand out, you press X to activate the interaction, and then for most part, you'll use the movement controls to interact with this. And so I'm just going to give you a few instances of how this works out in game, give you the kind of the breadth of all the kind of interactions and what we can do with them.
It's been restored. The foundation is 1,000 years old.
Careful.
I know what I'm doing.
Perfect. Sounds like I did something.
This is the later part of the puzzle.
Is that a boat? What does it mean?
It could be the Ark of Bulrushes. Carried Moses down the Nile.
That doesn't look like baby Moses. How did you find this place?
There was a old scroll inside the chest. Let's just save it for another time, huh? That did it.
Yeah, so these are super duper useful. We had a lot of uses for them throughout the game. It could be something simple as just pulling a lever, or it could be something very specific, like we want to transition really seamlessly between cinematics. So you see there with the golden idol at the end, like being able to make that all in gameplay, pushing down the pressure plate puzzle, and then finally when I exchange it, that's when we clip to the iconic ending there. It's a good thing for transitioning between first and third person camera. So in the puzzle where we're doing the fountain wheel and moving all of that around, it was really good that I could see the whole of it. And we can get more cinematic angles for certain things as well. Locked in place for these puzzles and these interactions gives us really good limitations to the player. It kind of simplifies things. In a lot of puzzle games, it's really easy to get lost with the amount of variation that can go on. Like if we were just allowing players to do everything, it would be probably too much. And then finally, it's nice to have this diverse, high fidelity of interactions. Like this gives Indy a lot more verbs to interact with and lots of different things we can see him do. It makes him really feel like he fills up the space and isn't just, walking and jumping, walking and jumping. The second part of this I was talking about is the pickups. So pickups and activations, at the earliest parts of development, these were very, very intimately linked. As development went on, we realized that they had to be kind of separated into their own system. So I've kind of divided them up in this talk as well. This is quite simple. You pick up various items with either your right hand or with both hands. You press X when you focus on the item, and then you have a bunch of different interactions based on what object you picked up. So in this cogwheel here, I pick it up and I can just walk around with it, but there's definitely a place where I can combine it into a puzzle and then use that to kind of wind up something. There could be bandages that you could take, and for these, you pick them up and you immediately stash them into your satchel because you're probably not going to want them right that second. And then there's also weapons. So if I take a bottle or let's say a violin, then I walk around with it and look for someone to knock over the head with a violin. And we have a lot of different kinds of items you can pick up in the game. I would say hundreds, if not thousands, of different items that you can pick up. And this required a whole lot of fidelity for all the different shapes we needed to accommodate. So way back in the day, right at the start of the project, Jakob Eriksson, a programmer on the project, took reference shots of all these images he had in his house. It was during COVID, so he was walking around his house and he found lots of different objects that we could use to pose his hand. So we have small, medium, and large categories. And for the cylinder here, you can see this small one. This is a pin, and I think he couldn't find it. He was really sad. He had all these pictures of him taking pictures of the pin to see how his hand was shaped during it. And then medium and large as well for the cylinder. The box, same, small, medium, and large. And you can see the large, if anyone has a guess for what the large item was. CD case, that's right, yeah, so the compact disc case. And then a rectangle as well. I'm not sure. Yeah, he was really sad because he couldn't remember exactly all the ones, but he did remember pen and compact disc. We also have two-handed shapes, and a lot of them, small cylinder, medium cylinder, large cylinder. And due to the cropping of this, you can see it's kind of hard to get all in the frame. And this was a problem we had just in general, of getting these two-handed objects to fit nice in there. And as a result, even though we have a lot of references that we used, we did not end up using the two hands as much. And in fact, the small and large sphere and the medium cylinder, I checked through all the files, and we never actually used those in-game. These are the only entities that are set up to use that pose right there, those gray box things. Yeah, and so this is a look into the system a bit. These are all the one-handed objects, and that's the CD case, and I pick it up. And then if I focus on another object and pick it up, he immediately drops it and picks up the other one. And here you can see as the hand tracks to different objects as you change focus. And when I stop focusing, the hand goes away. And so this is the small cylinder, the pin. And then we're blending between different directions for this so that we can inspect it from all sides. And each shape has its own set of animations there. And this fits really well with the key, actually. And it's no noticeable clipping, and it looks really natural. And so we didn't have to do any kind of custom animations for anything that uses this shape. They just will all use that same thing, and same pose. Basically just where he will grab onto it on that shape is a tag we set. This is our melee shape for one hand. We always use medium cylinder. You can throw and punch and do all these things. And that uses the same shape. And
Better rest, would you?
That'll do you.
you might notice that it's the same shape in his hand here too. Yep. Another look into some of the inspects. You can see that you can look at the bottom and the top of this shape is what the animator wanted to do. And it actually fits really well with this urn. I think it really brings this to life and gives you like a in-depth look at all the objects that we have in the game, all the artifacts, which is very important for an archaeologist. And then if I collect it, I can take it out of my satchel and walk around the world and inspect it again if I want to. All of the items I collect either go in the journal or into the satchel. Here I'm going to use the key I picked up earlier. Just combine it with this door. Well, first I'll inspect it. Combine it. Oh, good. Also, we have like a general system for things called combines. One is just kind of teleporting it into place or interpolating it into place. We also have, you can do an animation to it. So made a nice little puzzle or living world thing where you're just sorting some mail if you wanted to. And didn't take that long to do it. It was really fun. Okay, we have these systems of activations, we have these systems of pickups, and this really is supposed to go in line with our general gameplay direction, which is that we want to have a diverse set of things. So this is from the very earliest slides on what the design direction was for the game, and we've cut it up into 6 slices. They all look equal, but I would say, of course, exploration and puzzles is a much bigger slice, and then we would probably put running and gunning as a very thin slice. This is just to illustrate diversity, and it was a really good thing to try to figure out, like from the very beginning, if we have these 6 things, like how do we transition between them? What is the glue that kind of fits it all together so it feels like, it doesn't feel like a start-stop or it doesn't feel awkward. It's just kind of naturally exploring and getting into, fights or, finding a puzzle or finding clues and so forth. And the pickups were really a good way of kind of minimizing some of the combat stuff and opening up more of the discovery mode, more exploration. And we ended up putting in several hundred what we call activity notes into the game. So in every location you go to, you can pick up these activity notes. And this will give you a little bit of what's called adventure points. And it's only through picking up and completing quests and stuff that you actually get experience in our game. So we don't have fights ever give you experience at all. It's all about exploration, kind of doubling down on that. And I'm just going to give you a view into some of the ones we had. This is in one of the starting levels, and it's about a 20-minute level. This one says that the Pope is sick. Sorry, usually there's like a UI on the side here that has the translation. Unfortunately, I did not include that. Map, another letter from different soldiers to each other, a pharmacy receipt, and later on you'll find out that you'll meet this pharmacist later on in the game. This is an adventure book. This is the thing you use to unlock new abilities and upgrades in the game. Another note. This is another call out to later on. If you rotate this around, you see that it's the Pyramids of Giza, and this is a location you'll actually get to explore later in the game. Another book. This is a note that we put next to this door to tell you, hey, there's a key. Hey, I put the key, I locked it upstairs. So yeah, just a way of giving the player some guidance there. Here are I guess these are mystery notes. So there's a hidden passage in this little area, and these are a bunch of clues that you can find to kind of cue you in on where the mystery is and how to complete it. So you need to take these 2 bull paintings and rotate them so that the horns are facing each other, and that will open up this ancient passage, and which you'll find a letter from Borgia from 1582, I think is what it is. Yeah. And all of these things that you find, all these notes, you can put them in your satchel or you're putting them into your journal. So we have these really elaborate layouts for all of the different notes that you find in the game. It was a huge undertaking to say, like, okay, well, I found that note about the key. We're going to make a specific page with a sketch on the back and tape it in there. And it really is just such a wonderful in-world object. You basically can pull it out anytime in the game and go through your entire journey and re-inspect all these notes. I think it really paid off quite nice, actually. And here's another view of the journal and how it plays out.
What's this?
And when you equip this map, it'll automatically open your journal
This will come in
for
handy.
you. So you can walk around the world with it, and it also is going to show that waypoint marker, so it's a diegetic way of getting waypoints to come out, which I think was really nice. And I'm still able to interact with things, so I can pick up this letter. I'm not locked out of doing things.
Letter from a Vatican priest.
Okay. And it's just a single button to close it out if I wanted to remove it.
Don't turn around. Off to the dreamlands.
I was a little bit bummed. Like I did this shot, and that was the better version of me walking through. But other ones, I did it, and he fell into the table, and stuff went scattering. So I'm sorry that you guys didn't get that. Maybe if you play through, you can try it out. Yeah, with Indy's journal, it was a bit of work to get it to be like a really useful in-world tool. I mean, I can't go through all of the details. I'm just going to focus on one aspect that kind of came in late in development. Actually, is that from the very beginning, it was like press the start button to equip the journal in this raised mode. So you pull it up in front of your face, and you're kind of locked in place, and you have a menu where you can see, what notes you've collected, all of the, what missions you can undertake. And then you have to press another button to go into that lowered mode and walk around with a map. And it prioritized slowing down, it prioritizes raised mode, and what we saw that it really was hindering lowered mode functionality. And throughout testing, we noticed time and time again, even when we gave so many explicit tutorials on it, and even I think the only tutorial we had in the game that forced you to do an action was the journal tutorial, and still people would forget or not use it that much. So late in development, we made a decision to prioritize the lower mode instead. It seems simple now, but at the time it was, oh God. Yeah. Press the button to equip the journal in the lowered mode with the map. You can walk around with it equipped. And then you can just use the bumpers to switch to various parts of the journal, to where all your missions are, to your adventure books, and to the travel section. And yeah, this prioritizes staying in the game. It streamlines guidances and waypoints so that I can immediately get a waypoint on screen. I don't have to press 2 buttons to do that. And it actually, I think it's a really good, nice, gradual transition from I'm in full gameplay, I have a different kind of mode, and now I'm actually reading a book. I think that's a much better thing than, oh, I'm actually fully out of the gameplay, sorta, and then I kind of transition back to a different mode of it. Yeah, so this is what that looks like just one more time. Cool. Now we're going to talk a little bit about melee and stealth. There's a lot of work put into this system, and there was a lot of, well, this was a new thing for us, right? We have stealth in all the Wolfenstein titles. We have limited melee, but this was something we really had to prove out and figure out for the studio for the first time. So it was really important to us to get this right and to make sure that we focused on this, because it is much more of an Indiana Jones thing. I don't think of him as a run and gunner. I think of him as a gun and then run away sort of character. And what we wanted is we wanted these to be fun. We wanted these to be pretty funny, useful things. Of course, getting there was a little bit more work than I thought it would be, but it was a really nice gradual evolution. And what we found throughout development, at the end of it, there was, well, I would say about halfway through, we have the associate game director, Frederick Jungdahl, kind of just sent out a message like, hey, I really like this system. Here are 100 different suggestions for different weapons we could put in the game. I was like, oh, okay, let me go through all of those. There's a lot of interesting stuff like bone clubs and, oh gosh, I wish I had it. Yeah, okay. But yeah, what we found is that these unique weapons really were rewarding. Players would find stuff, and that was how will this break over someone's head? What does this sound like? And so forth. The handbell I showed earlier, I remember when that first showed up, probably in the last 6 months of development, it first showed up, and the level designer sitting next to me was like, oh, wow, check this out. And it was making the sounds and stuff, and then he went to go throw it, and they hadn't set up the throw sound, so it just made a thud. And he was just so disappointed. and of course, we talked to the sound designer, and he's like, yeah, it's coming, it's coming. Yeah, and it fits the character. It fits the character and the situation. We imagine Indy as being very scrappy. You know, you get into an encounter, and then he goes to reach for something, and he pulls out a plunger. He's going to use it. He's going to try to beat up a guy with a plunger. And that feels much more humorous and in line with the character than if he was to pull out like a lead pipe or, you know, always use his gun. And then finally, downplays gunfights. And this kind of became, this wasn't the initial goal for this, but as we went on, it became more and more a focus. Like, we want gunfights to be less common. We want them to be less useful. And one way we did it is just having cool stealth and melee objects to use. So I would say this was a big concern because we knew that guns had to be in the game. Indy has a gun. But what we were finding from the very early playtest is that players would partake in the stealth, they would knock out an enemy, they would find a gun, and then they would take out a few enemies right away. And there was nothing that really said, nah, that's not a good thing, and no one really liked doing it. It was just the thing that we were allowing. And so we looked at the problem and we started to develop systems to kind of reduce the gunplay and work around that. But that wasn't necessarily the solution. But there was a lot of things that went into this. I will give you another picture of the early game because you see someone hit someone with a violin or a handbell. That looks really cool. But when we were first playing the game, it looked like this. We had only these two weapons for a while. Yeah, so so the melee weapons wasn't an obvious thing. It's like, yeah, this is going to do it. This is going to make everyone wants to participate in this. There was no blocking or countering. There was no combos or anything into the game. But as we really started to lean very heavily on the system that we had with all the different grip shapes and all the different items that we could easily set up. And so this is that same Castel Sant'Angelo in the early game, and this is just a brief view of some of the weapons in it. Bottles, a rake, a broom, shovel, wire cutters, a candlestick, violin bow, so forth. And we get some interesting, a nice kind of mandolin thing. The fly swatter, which if you use this, you get an achievement, so yeah. Actually using a gun. So this was also a kind of a later feature that we introduced. It was that all weapons could just be used in a melee mode as well. And so we were kind of always nudging players maybe it's smart for you to knock him out with the butt of the gun and not get all this attention to yourself. And then a lot of these props were great for living world situations, really played into this. We have a little kitchen in this level. Somebody obviously needs a crutch. Of course, we need soup spoons if someone's at the buffet, and this. I think some of these you can find that have bits of egg dried to them. Umbrella. Does anyone know what this is? I have no idea. It's like a fruit thing? I don't know. So tell me afterward. I don't know. But yeah, well, along with having lots of melee weapons, we did a lot of other small things. I'm going to go through this one pretty quickly because there's a lot. Always aim to shoot. So we never wanted to see Indy like this, walking around like this. So it was very explicit that he holds his gun up, and it had to be a very intentional thing to aim the gun and shoot someone. All the pickups that you find, all the guns that you find in the game that are temporary, they're not reloadable. So there's none of this walking around and picking up ammunition. There's none of that. You're only left with what enemy weapons, what ammo was in them when they dropped them. And honestly, a lot of them dropped empty, and then that's just a good melee weapon. You can use that as well. So that's always an option. We removed explicit gun upgrades. Now, this came pretty early, and it's pretty obvious. You just don't see Indiana Jones as going to his weapon bench and attaching a silencer or getting a moon clip. So we cut that one pretty quick. We had the idea of having several different guns that you get through the game, just as that's a cool reward. But again, it seemed to be a bit too much, and we had all this other stuff that was just as interesting in my mind. We removed chokeouts. Indy's not Solid Snake. It felt really bad. We decided to remove that and trying to go to you have to use a melee weapon to knock someone out. It feels more in line with the character, and it also has the benefit of making melee weapons much more useful, so you're always on the lookout for them. Yeah, and just as the melee system just slowly improved, we realized that like we did have guys with guns in the early levels, and wasn't necessary. It added too much difficulty, and so we just removed it. Yeah, all guns use the melee. And then finally, this is the one I think everyone kind of calls out when they do a review of the game, is that if using a gun is just not usually that smart. If you use a gun, everyone else says, yeah, I can use my gun too, and Indy's not a superhero. He can't take a bunch of bullets. So you quickly get overwhelmed doing this. And so if you do it a few times, you can get away with it. Maybe if you're up against a corner, up against a wall or something. But yeah, it's not a great idea. So this was a big concern. We had lots of slow iteration to get it to a good spot. And then one day it just wasn't a concern anymore. You know, in playtest we were noticing more and more people just wouldn't pull out a gun. They forgot they had a gun. And then we actually realized, the design director, Jens Andersen, took me aside. He's like, do we have a tutorial for the gun, like to equip it? I was like, no. So it was just by chance people would discover it. And we thought about it, it's like, should we put one in? Maybe not, I don't know. We did eventually put one in, which is that if you pick up revolver ammunition, you get a little brief thing that says, oh, you can equip your gun this way if you want. But otherwise, you know, people just were more excited to use things like the whip and to use melee weapons and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, and these were my favorite articles that I saw about it. Cool. Next thing, we're going to talk about some more learnings that we had, specifically with the pickup system. And this one was a real, I mean, I think going into it, we knew this was going to be a challenge. All the steps that we needed to take to figure this out was a big learning, like what we needed to do, what needed to be communicated, and what kind of pipelines we set up. So they were immediately promising, but they weren't that fun. I mean, you could see from that early video of like, it's just not a super cool thing to, well, it's kind of cool, but you know, it's still gray and whatnot. And we realized that we just didn't understand exactly the design space. There was a lot of blue sky thinking about this, and with the idea of all these different poses that you could use to pick up things and make them interesting in your hand and inspect, we didn't really understand exactly what would be interesting or fun. So we did some experiments. And here was one we did, I think in the first year of development. This is me recreating the experiment, because I don't have a video of the original. But it's in Marshall College. And we're like, we told some designers, just make everything in pickup. See what happens. And so this is what happened. Yeah, a cup. There's lots of cups, aren't there? Yeah. And we also had chess pieces. Can I pick up every chess piece on the board? It seems a bit funny, and it was a bit funny, but it got everyone kind of thinking in the same direction. Everyone was playing the game. They were kind of understood that, like, okay, we have a lot of things that we can do with this system. There is a lot of possibility space. But we need to think really hard about what we can do to make this fit the game. Here was another, this is actually from back in the day. This is a test bed we did of Indy's secretary's office. And just, so of course, this is cool to pick up and look at. You know, but what's going to take it to the next level, really? You can imagine some photographs, Indy saying something about it. That might be quite nice. But then we get to this level of like a shot glass of some sort, or a weathered old book that has no information on it. How many pieces of trash do I really want to throw away? And then, I mean, maybe that could be interesting. Yep. And then we found some things we needed to design around, like not being able to throw an old relic and possibly break it into a million pieces. So the context didn't need to be so constrained, but its placement and use needed to support all the gameplay and character that we wanted to have in the game. And I think this push really helped people understand what the effort was. It was not just one designer going to fix it all, like go in and like, oh, I can just set up any old object. It was going to be like cross-discipline. It was going to be strike teams being able to take these things to make smaller missions, smaller interactions, ask for, oh, I need like a hint note. It's just going to be a postcard on one side, but on the other side, can we have it say, you know, like, there's a secret stash here. Oh, okay, yeah, we can do that. And these grew in complexity as people came more and more got to understand the system a little bit more. So we have these smaller mysteries throughout all the sandboxes, and that's Vatican and Giza and Sukhothai. And these are smaller, sometimes more involved puzzles. And having at least 5 or 6 in each one of them really helps like build a lot of knowledge about how to do those. We also started to do more micro living world activities in addition to our bigger activities. And then of course we had all the pickups, like we want to tell a story about like the enemy forces are doing an excavation in these temples in Giza. Like, what are they actually doing? And most of them are just like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm really stupid, and like I flooded the chamber again. So you get an insight into how stupid the enemy is, and that's always nice in one of these games. The last thing is like this was really a studio-wide effort, as I've said already, but we needed to have really strong guidelines so that people understood, like artists understood what we were going for, designers really had a good idea of what the problem space was, and so we came up with, all the designers sat together and we came up with a list of guidelines and worked with the art department to kind of educate everyone. It's like, this is what we're dealing with, this is all the issues that we're having, and this is what we needed to correct it. So the guidelines were trying to solve some problems. What is interactable? You know, we had all these inconsistent interactions between similar and even the same objects. We had the issue where like, you can pick up this bottle here, but someone had placed the same bottle in a different level, and you can't pick it up. They just didn't, no one knew that that bottle should be something that you could pick up throughout the game. People were constantly confused about like what was interactable. Like that chess piece is kind of a surprise now. It's like you would come up there, it's like, why can't I pick up this chess piece? So trying to figure these things out was like what should be interactable, and how can we get the player to understand, it's like, if there's something at the other end of the stage and I see it, like I want to know whether or not, like, what I'm about to do when I get to it. Am I going to pick it up and inspect it? Am I going to pick it up and put it in my satchel? Am I going to pick it up and use it as a weapon? Like, it needed to be intuitive and something that was consistent throughout the whole game. Yeah, I just said that. Cool, and so this is the space we're dealing with, right? Like, these are very dense with lots of props. It's really beautiful, lots of nice lighting. And how do we get players to know that, okay, we have that really nice highlight there for the piece of fruit? That's helping because we definitely want people to always notice the fruit. But if you look around the periphery here, maybe you can see that there's a few bottles that you can pick up. And players should know that, oh yeah, that's a weapon I can use. Yeah, lots of stuff in these spaces. You might be able to see the violin leaning against the desk there. That's a really nice call out as well. So yeah, these are actually slides from a deck we made for these guidelines, just basically giving examples of what was going wrong. You know, this same bottle was being used as non-interactive set dressing, and that was on us to like figure out a good pipeline, to work with the art department to make sure that like we weren't using the same assets to be interactable and non-interactable. Of course, the types of objects. We have pickups and static props. We have the activations. And these pickups are just one-piece objects. Like, I'm never going to pick up like a microscope or a desk fan. It's just too clumsy. It doesn't feel right to walk around with those things. But a torch or a pipe or a key, these things all make sense as something you would want to pick up. Large singular props read as pickups, and if I place them on the edges of tables, if I place them like, you know, if I'm going to go through this corridor here and there's a bottle on the ground, like that's a good placement for it. I can pick that up on my way. And then another thing for the art was making sure that we had cobwebs and a bunch of weathered looks for all of the things that can't be picked up. Like, I think having stacks of old papers or books all placed up on the shelf together, it's something that just reads as, Indy's not going to go looting through the trash, right? So essential elements, we had the size, placement, in good repair, color and design. And I think really important here was really well-considered UI. And I'm not going into too much detail about what we did there today, but I will say that it was from the very get-go, this was something that took a lot of time and patience to try to figure out what was the best thing that still felt like, you know, it's minimal, but it's very usable. You know, and well-considered UI is basically the difference between having a game that's kind of playable and a game that's really great. Yeah. Cool, and I think this is my last section, which I get to go talk a little bit about doors, so everyone hang on to your butts. Yeah, so grip activations. So we've seen a lot of these using the fountain wheel and rotating the dragon statue around. I think they look really cool, and they like give a new view to the world and kind of really ground you in the fact that you're solving big puzzles and stuff. But it was really steep learning curve for our designers. They're already very good generalists. They're doing a lot of things to script missions. They're blocking out ways, they're blocking out the levels. They're setting up AIs a lot of the time. And for them to have this like really, let's say, really specific animation-driven system was a bit too much for a lot of folks. And we found really early on it was hard to make placeholders for these interactions, and that it was making a lot of people very frustrated. People just didn't want to use the system because I don't know, it could kind of make you feel like you're not doing a good job. So, for example, we're going to use doors today because I got to work on doors. So, if anybody doesn't know, doors are like really hard to work on in video games. It's just, you wouldn't think so. It's always kind of a smile and a joke, but it's like, you really have to kind of embrace how the difficulty. You can't run away from it, and let it take part of your soul. You'll be fine, but, yeah. And I'll give you a few examples of why doors are complicated and what some of the problems we were having. And something as simple as unlocking a door, why that became really, really troublesome for us. So this is the thing that maybe a lot of people don't realize, but we have a lot of set dressing with doors. They're supposed to be cosmetic walls. You're not ever supposed to go in that door. It's a failure if the player wastes their time going up to every one of these. And we were seeing in play tests time and time after again that the door that really was dimly lit over to the side, had a box in front of it, it was like, people were like, maybe I should go see if that door's unlockable. Maybe there's something over there. And we spent a lot of time setting out the levels, placing objects, making sure the visual design of the doors. And in Indiana Jones, all of the doors that are interactable have a window in them. They have glass. So that should be one highlight for it. And that helps a lot, but it doesn't solve every problem. So no one has solved it. It will go on forever. We have lots of different things to communicate to the player about doors. We have 8 different types of messages, for instance. Like, I go up to this door, it's locked. It says, requires jail cell key. Okay? Yep. And we need to have one of those for every door that has a key. It needs to say requires so-and-so key and so on. I have the key, so now we need to say, we have to have the prompt come up so you equip the key and do that. We have doors that are lockpicked. So we want to tell you that this is interactable, but we don't want to give away too much, so we have another prompt that says locked. We have doors that you come up to that have no handle, but it says opens from the other side, blocked by a weapon or something like this, and so forth. It becomes quite complicated, and yeah, it's not every level designer wants to do it. And finally, the exhausting one. So we have key doors that have a handle. We have non-key doors that have a handle. We have double doors of the key type and the non-key type. We have swing doors that automatically open when you walk into and you put out your hand and stuff. We have swing doors that require you to unlock them with a special key first. And then as you walk through, you automatically change into a disguise. And then if you were to walk through it again in that disguise, it just pushes open. But if you change out of the disguise and try to go through this door again, it would say, you need to put on your disguise again to walk through it. So that was solving a very specific case of where we needed to get people in disguises for various cutscenes and various different, and it's mostly invisible, but not to be. Yeah. Doors that are unlocked via script, doors that can only be opened on one side via a latch, doors that require you to pick up an object that is blocking them to unlock them, one that Gina will unlock pick for you, and then we have the static doors. And so it's just, I've made this little handy map of like what the door space looks like, and it's more door, yeah. We have a lot of memes actually. Yeah. But so this was a bit too much for the level designers, and so what we ended up doing is that for all of these kind of like grip activation interactions, we had a smaller strike team that worked on the bulk of the work. And the technical designers who took it over were really, really good and fast and really loved doing this work and knew how to debug all the animation errors and stuff. And so it ended up just finding strength in people who just really wanted to focus on this work. And I think it worked out. This guy's really super into how stealthily and incrementally you can open doors. And I think he's right. Yeah, and then lastly, I think starting out, we had a lot of ambitions for all these interactions that you could do, and we just, as time went on, we became just more lenient on what we would allow. Like we wanted to have people locked into place and that you had to use the movement. But as we got later into development, we still had this kind of like prefab. Oh, sorry, let me do it again. We had this prefab that wasn't quite working. You know, the animation was hard to get right. The hand was lagging behind for some various reasons. If I move side to side, you'll see that the hand clips out side of the thing. And when we got to the end, we're like, okay, this is for an elevator? Yeah. How long do you think it's going to take? I don't know. Okay. Well, what if Indy just punches a button? Yeah, okay. How long did that take? Oh, a day. Yeah. So this is a much nicer, simple interaction for, I'm going to go to the first floor. Yeah. It's basically this. This is what we ended up with. We didn't want to fight with a big system, so we just pulled out our gun and hit the door handle. Cool. I'm approaching the end of the talk. I'm going to talk a little bit about controls. There was had a long bit about controls that I think would be better suited for more detail. So I'll just give a couple of learnings here. Early on in development, we had this activation button on the trigger. Well, the trigger was also used either for aiming, and so what you ended up with was that people would accidentally aim a lot when they meant to grab onto something. It just we never managed to make it work. We did a lot of stuff with focus stuff. We moved it to different buttons, but we always had the same problem. And so I think we really spent a long time trying to make it feel good on the triggers, and it did. It feels really nice on triggers for a lot of these interactions, but we just didn't have the controller space to do it. So just save yourself some time. You should try to avoid this in every context, and it should be consistent throughout the game. Like having these kind of context-sensitive interactions can be really difficult and tricky to get right. And even if 1 out of 100 times you get a bad interaction, it still feels really bad. It still takes a lot away from it. Buttons should have the same function in every context. We had something for a little while where you would do a grip if you were if you were not in melee pose, and then if you were in melee pose, you would do a punch. This was pretty bad because it meant you had to be in range of an enemy, and it was too much complication. It should always be if I hit right trigger, I do a punch, and that really solved it, and everyone immediately understood what that button did, what the constraints for it, and it went a long way to solving how should melee function in our game. Oh, I had a lot more to say about that. Yeah. Pressing right trigger should always throw a punch. Pressing X should always activate a usable item, for instance. And I'll just say this, on controls, changing controls is really tricky for the whole development team. If you do this, do it early and don't do it that much. It's something that players and programmers and testers have a hard time adjusting to. There's a lot more involved in it than just saying one button. Especially, I would say, especially for a AAA development. All right, cool. That is, good UI is the difference between playable and enjoyable. I said that earlier, I'll say it again. I really wish I had more time to talk more about how the process went for, having all the activation prompts for these things, but alas, just trust me, it works when it does. Cool, thank you very much. Time for QA?
All right, thank you, Zeke. We have time for questions, but first, let me ask you this. How much did you guys geek out when you heard you were doing Indiana Jones?
I was really happy. I asked my mom if she still had the VHS of Temple of Doom, to see if she could send it to me, because I think we recorded it. I think I saw that when I was 5, so it might explain some stuff.
But how much pressure was it?
I don't know. The character is, we all know this character. We know that he's grumpy. We know he's he's grumpy and he's smart and he's charming and he's stupid. And it was a lot of relief to just know every interaction that you had in the game, every little thing that you'd pick up, oh, that's not working because it doesn't feel like Indy. And everyone kind of intuited that. There was ever any arguments within the development team of well, no, I think Indiana Jones is this kind of hero or this kind of. I think that's one of the strengths of the character is that it's really everyone knows who he is. Yeah.
All right. So, do we have questions from the audience? Yeah, we do. There's a microphone coming.
Who gets it?
First of all, thank you so much. Amazing talk. My question is mainly about procedural animations and if they were considered for all the different types of interactions and different things in the environment you can grip, or were they all really static animations?
We had a number of procedural animations that we tried out, and we did a real hard push for doing a lot of procedural stuff. Unfortunately, the amount of fidelity that we have throughout the game really clashed hard with this procedural stuff. The animators and programmers tried very, very hard to see what we could do to get these things. It would have saved a lot of time. It just, all the procedural animations that we worked on in the game, just we never found the right spot for it. And so most of them are not procedural, but yeah, it was. I would say this though about the procedural system, like it was something that level designers were working on, and once they had a good handle on it, they were making all sorts of cool interactions. And so that was a really rapid way of them getting something in the game that looked still kind of okay. But as we got closer to ship, we replaced them with other stuff. So it was a really good for exploration, and I think actually if we could do it again and maybe see about having the procedural system implemented earlier on so that the level designers would be less frustrated with the limited scope and waiting for animations and stuff to come in. Yeah.
Thank you.
Next question over there.
In the front?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the talk. I was wondering, one thing that really caught my attention about the interactions is that sometimes the camera goes into third-person mode. And I was wondering what your considerations were to make that decision to break first person and maybe even immersion a bit to show the character from behind.
Yeah, so we also have this for all the traversals, like if you're doing like climbing and whatnot, and I think it's a nice way of being able to show like, and if you use a whip and you're like climbing up that way and doing whip swings and whatnot, we're also going into third person for those. This was, I think it felt pretty natural. I think some people have said that they find it a bit disruptive until I think playing it really kind of is the proof of like it feels pretty natural. You expect it. It's an anticipation after a while. But it was nice. It's nice to give us a different view, and it's something that MachineGames comes out of Starbreeze, which did Chronicles of Riddick back in the day, which did this. So we were really confident about doing that and what all the advantages there were for it. Yeah.
More questions over here.
Yeah, thanks for the awesome talk. It was really cool. One thing I'm wondering is how well do you think those learnings and things that you kind of found out regarding interaction would translate to a VR version of the game or a future VR option?
I mean, we haven't talked about. I haven't talked to anyone really about this too much, but actually, this morning, there's Ruben is going to be giving a talk later about VR. He's over here. Yeah, you should go to his talk. And he was looking at some of my slides like, yeah, it sounds like VR. It seems like we probably have a lot in common. So I think there is a lot of learnings from it. And we did look at Half-Life Alyx a good bit for inspiration. Yeah, I don't know. I feel. Let's say this, I've never really worked with VR, so obviously I would not know too much what I'm talking about, but I could at least be confidently incorrect, on these things.
I have one final question then.
You were talking about the problems with the doors. How about other pickables? What were like the biggest problems in guiding the players? Hey, look, you can pick that, you can interact with this.
I would say a huge issue that we had was just it was not knowing what the pickup was going to do. It was not so much like finding it. I guess before we had outlines, that was really hard to find some objects. That helped a good bit of just like there's something a bit in a dark space, and that helped. But it would be that you went to go pick up something, and instead of holding it in your hand, you were like inspecting it, and then I have to collect it. I don't know. So just really being super consistent about like notes are always something that you inspect first and collect. Bandages are something that have a highlight from far away, so people know the shape. They when you focus on it, it's going to say X, bandages. I'm going to tell you what the item name is. And then when I press X on it, I'm going to immediately just stash it. I think just having a lot of different small things with the way that outlines appeared, when they appear, like weapons, all the melee improvised weapons, all the melee improvised weapons, all the guns and stuff, when you focus on them, they show an outline. But other than that, they don't show anything at all. So it's like you have to kind of go exploring for them. However, if it's a puzzle piece, we'll show the outline from a little bit far away. When I focus on it, it'll always have a prompt on it to say what the item is, and then you can always inspect them as well. If you haven't, you can walk around with them, and if you hold another button, you're able to go in that inspect mode. So it was just about like aligning on like exactly what every item should be, and we were really stern about making sure that like everything could fit, even if it was pretty technically ambitious. It was because if once stuff started to be inconsistent, like it had these huge ripple effects, and players would get confused, and ways that you would just like, oh no, they'll know. It'll be no. It's better to be like in terms of prompting. It's better to be like overly secure and overly stingy on it. Stingy? That's not the right word. Overly strict on it than to kind of be lax. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Zeke.
Yep. Thank you.